Hello, it's December 9th. I'm about 1 minute early, but I thought I'd get on here and see if anybody's ready to go. This is for the It Takes a Guild cardigan tutorial, a question and answer session. I don't have very many questions this week, but I brought in some extra things to talk about. So I can talk about knitting all day long. So I just brought some other things in. We'll wait till we get some people going on here. Let me see my side stream. There we go. Hello, Roger. How are you today? Good to see you. I have an answer for your question, but we'll let some other people get on here. Hello. So I've been working on my sweater. Here it is. And I keep getting interrupted for other things. So I've only gotten this much done on my sleeve. I'll try it on in a little bit so you can see my progress. I hope to have the sleeves finished. This one will be done today and maybe get the next one started. You know, once you start doing the decreases, your stitch counts get smaller and smaller, so it goes faster and faster. Hello. So we've got Kelly, Francois, Ray, Roger, Kathy, Susan, Carlotta, Dolise, Diana, Aubrey. So, well, you notice I'm wearing my Pavé poncho today. I want to show it to you again. It's one of the other things that I thought we could talk about. It's so pretty. So this is mosaic knitting. It's just a variety of mosaic patterns, and it's worked in 2 big rectangles, and then you join them together. They're joined together with 3 needle bind off, so there's no seaming. And then you pick up stitches around the neck, and you work this beautiful brioche collar. And some of the tricks that I used in creating the shaping of this collar are the same tricks that we're going to use in the shawl collar on our current sweater. So on this, what I did is I have my total cast on here, and I decreased to make it pull in. So it continued going in with the shape here because I didn't want my neck to start way out here. That's too far. So I decreased by 50% going in this way. And then I worked just a couple of rows, and I increased and changed to a larger needle size at the same time. So I have my 50% decrease, then a 100% increase going to a larger needle size, and it gives this gorgeous little design here, but also allows the collar to flare out like this, which is the look I was after. Hello, Zane. Hi, Mary, Sylvia, Beth, Lori, Tracy, Sung Pak, Lori Wilkerson, Terry. Hello, everybody. So my friend Ron Warren is co-owner of the Twisted Skein here in Bakersfield, and he made kits for this. So if you are interested in this pattern, it's called Pavé Poncho. It's in my Ravelry store, and you can get it in 2 colorways. The one that it's knitted in, which is this blue, and this other one that's like this red, kind of like wine colored. And if you look up close, the way the yarn has cashmere in it, so it's, and it just has this beautiful, looks like beads, just gorgeous. That's a beautiful color. He does a great job. It's his own yarn that he dyes. And it's really, really pretty. So that's available in my Ravelry store. This is my big commercial. I'm going to show you some other things too. So let's talk about some of the questions people have asked about the sweater. Let me take this off. And I'll put my sweater on. So there's some interesting things when you get to the sleeves, which is what we're going to be starting. Number 1, if you're doing the Intarsia cables, Then we've got to start doing them in the round, which is a little bit differently. And I have a video, it's in process. It'll be released later this afternoon on how to do the Intarsia cables in the round. It's different than working them flat, and you need to know how to do that before you start your sleeves. Also, I have my videos on no holes at the underarms. So be sure to watch that before you start your sleeve when you're going to pick up your stitches to work in the round. It's called Avoiding Holes at the Underarms or something, but Dolise has linked to it, and it'll be also in the written pattern that's going to come out this afternoon, the update on the sleeves. So you'll see, I would watch that video before you start, so you don't get holes in your underarms. And then let's see. Roger asked a really good question. He said, on the bind off for the ribbing, do I just suggest using the knit binding off in pattern? Like if you have knit 2, purl 2 ribbing to bind off in knit 2, purl 2. I think for the bottom of your sweater, that looks good. This is bound off in knit 1, purl 1, because you want a pretty good foundation here. And probably that would work good. But when we do the shawl collar, you'll have some other options. For example, you can bind off, do a tubular bind off that's just absolutely gorgeous for the edge of the shawl collar. And you can do it in knit 1, purl 1, or knit 2, purl 2. So I have videos on how to do that in the round already, but I'll make a couple for how to do it worked flat. It's absolutely lovely looking. It's kind of like the icing on the cake of putting this beautiful edging on. You do it with a needle and yarn, you know, with a tapestry needle and your yarn, but it's not difficult to do, and it creates a gorgeous edge. It's not as strong as the standard bind off, but for the shawl collar part, you want something that is flexible that will open up back here. You can also use the standard bind off, and I'll have demonstration of how to do that as well on your shawl collar. So some other questions that were asked. Gone Riding wanted to know if I would give an idea when I'll do the next knit along. Oh, I'm sorry. That was that was Sweet Jane 11. I missed a name. Sweet Jane 11 wants to know when I'm going to do the next knit along. It'll be after the first of the year. She also wanted to know if I have an idea of about how much yarn you would use. If you're going to use the same weight of yarn as you used in this sweater, you'll probably use about the same, although you won't be having a shawl collar. The shawl collar probably uses a whole 100 grams of yarn, so you could get probably 1 skein less. But just like in this sweater, you know, you did a lot of swatching. So I always buy a skein just for swatching. I hate to have that tight feeling of I'm going to use up all my yarn and I won't have enough. But you can recondition your swatch yarn if you need to. I have that video as part of this set of videos on reswatching or reconditioning your swatch yarn. So you can do that if you need to. What Gone Riding wanted to know is if I would have a video on single color brioche in the round. And yes, I put one up yesterday on single color brioche in the round and 2-color brioche in the round. They are worked differently than flat. So you don't want to have a jog where you join it. This is the single color brioche in the round. Here's my marker. So this is the beginning of the round. Between this blue stitch and the white stitch, that's the change of the round. And you can see it looks very, very good. There's no indication that you're changing the round there. It just blends in perfectly. And this is in the 2-color, same thing. It looks absolutely perfect. There's no change in the sequence. And I show how to do that in both of those videos. Okay? Remember, when you do brioche knitting, you do have to go down in needle size, and sometimes you even have to decrease your stitch count, especially on the sleeve, and I show it in that video because the brioche stitches are so much bigger than standard stitches. They push out sideways a lot. Okay, Floristine wanted to know, She watched the video, tidy knitting, tidy ribbing in the round, and I did make a boo-boo on the first video. I forgot to show both sides of the swatch so you could see, compare the two techniques. I redid that video and put that up this morning. It's at the 8-minute mark. If you've already watched it and you just want to see the two sides compared, just go to the 8-minute mark, and that's where you'll be able to see the comparison. And then Flit 2 says, I'm starting the second half of the pocket linings. What's happened to her is that when she goes to count over for the pocket, the flap at the bottom, she has to count past the side seam marker. For her, it's 7 stitches. This will be okay since you're at that point. Just go ahead and do that. It just means your pockets will be more on the sides a little bit. But I did make an adjustment back in the directions for people who are working the smaller sizes, that they would start with a pocket that's only 4.5 inches wide at the top versus 5.5 inches wide. And that should bring you right down to where when you do the flap, it'll come right out to the side seam rather than past it. 7 stitches isn't going to be really bad. I think you'll be just fine. I would continue moving forward with that. So let's see. Tracy Miller. Hi, I'm in the UK and this is a great time for me. I am 2 inches into my ribbing, so hoping to finish and cast off tonight. Yay! Okay, Dolly says she's included the special video for avoiding holes in the underarm in the thread Itag instructional videos. Yes, you can find it there. This is Suzanne from Germany. Hello. And thank you, Suzanne. I'm Gone Riding. We'll be watching at the end of the live stream. Okay. I did answer your question. So those videos are up for you now. And Susan Pell, are you the Susan who was to email me last week? Oh, okay, Susan, yes. Okay, so you guys got that. Let me see if I missed anything else. Hello, Claudio, Robbie, so glad to be here. I'm in Los Angeles, Granada Hills, to be specific. Much love for all you're giving to the knitting world. Just bought the pattern off for yarn soon. Yay! Have you released the pocket video? I didn't make a pocket video. What I did, this is from Jean Bishop. She says, have you released the pocket video? I made 3 videos that are related to the pocket. I made the one for picking up new fabric from behind the working stitches. I made one for knitting the lining with the purl bumps and connecting it as you'd work the pocket front. And I did a 3rd one for doing the combining row across the bottom. So all 3 of those videos now will be added to the tutorial. I've got a lot of videos to plug in there today. So before it comes out again this afternoon with the directions for the sleeves, I will plug those tutorial videos in for you. Speaking of sleeves, I'm giving you 3 options for the sleeves. Now, do you remember when we made our schematic in the beginning? And for the arm length, we measured from the middle of the back neck over the shoulder, down the bent arm to the wrist, right? Where we wanted our sleeve to be. So we have that number, that length. Then what you're going to do to determine how much you need to knit past here, this is where we just put the stitches on hold when we continue down on the body. You can measure from the back neck down to this point and subtract that from your total sleeve length. So then what you have left is this distance from here to here. And you know that's how far you're going to need to knit to get your sleeve to the right length. And all of us, our arms are different in length. So you will be making it specific to your arm length, not necessarily Ann Budd's arm I'm tongue-tied, arm length in her book. So this is, you can follow her directions if you want. That's fine. I have no problem with that, and it'll probably turn out lovely. But if you would like to custom make your sleeve to fit your arm specifically, you need to start out with that measurement that's from that bump on the back, the middle of the back of your neck to your wrist. Subtract the distance from the bump to here on this sweater that you've knit. Then that gives you the remaining distance from here to your sleeve. And Bud will tell you how many decreases you need to make in that distance. So of course you're going to have your ribbing down here. It'll be 2 or 3 inches. It's your choice. However long you want to make it. You can make it 2.5. You know, whatever distance you want for your ribbing is fine. Subtract that because you're not going to be doing decreases in the ribbing. Then you'll have your distance from the top of your cuff to here, and that's where your decreases are going to fit in. So you're going to have 3 choices. My chair sticks on my rug down there. So you put your arm out like this and look at your arm. Now my arm pretty consistently gets smaller and smaller as it goes down. So I'm going to work about 1.5 inches plain and then start my decreases, and they'll end right above the cuff. So if I know the distance here, so let's say this is 14 inches or 15 inches. I'm just guessing. I'm just pulling a number out of the air. And I need to make 15 sets of decreases between here and here. Then I need to know my row gauge. So this is when we can go back to our gauge swatch that we made, not your sweater, your gauge swatch. And you're going to check how many rows you're getting per inch and multiply that by 15 inches. Or whatever inches it was that I said, I don't remember. So if we use 15 inches and I need to work 15 sets of decreases, I need to work 1 every inch. So if I'm getting 7 rows to the inch, I know I need to do a decrease round every 7 rows, evenly distributed for my arm. Now let's say that your arm, you have a big muscle here. I don't have big muscles. Let's say your arm is bigger here, and then it starts getting smaller from the elbow on. Well, you're going to move, you're going to knit this straight down, no decreases, till you get to the elbow, and then you're going to distribute your decreases evenly between the elbow and your cuff. Same concept. So you just need to know the distance between your elbow and your cuff, and you would evenly distribute your decreases in that area. The third style is to take the sleeve straight down, no decreases, and right before the cuff, make a bunch of decreases, like knit 2 together. So you would have a sleeve that comes down and kind of poofs in, and then you would have your ribbing. I have drawings of each one of these styles in the section that's going to be coming out today, and you can choose which style you want to do. It's up to you. So here, remember we talked about, standard ease was be about 4 inches ease for your body, right? And 2 inches for your sleeve. So you can see here, I have my 2 inches of ease. It came out absolutely perfect. Do you see that? Even with I started decreasing about right here. And here's my ease for my arm. It's just right. Okay. You don't want it skin tight for outerwear, because this needs to go over your clothing. If you have it too tight, when you put it on over a shirt, it's going to bunch your shirt up all underneath, and it's going to be uncomfortable. Also, another thing I want to talk about, I noticed that several people, let me see okay. I noticed that several people didn't trust their gauge swatches. So what they did is they followed the directions that we all figured out, and they knitted down to the right number of increases for their raglan, and then they tried it on with their 2 inches or 3 inches of pins under the armpit, and they felt that it was too tight. Now, it's okay if it's a little bit too tight, because you have not blocked this sweater yet. You haven't blocked your fabric. And if you noticed, when you blocked your swatch, it relaxed, right? It got more pliable. And this fabric will too. So what these people did, they felt it was too tight, so they added extra increases and continued knitting for a while, and then tried it on again, and guess what? It was too big. So trust your swatch. The thing is, hi Judy, the thing is that if you made the swatch correctly, if you made it big enough, remember we talked about making big swatches, and you blocked it, and then you carried around and manipulated it for a few days before you measured your gauge, that gauge is going to be accurate, and you need to trust it. And after you do that a time or two and you find out that your results are correct, you'll start trusting your swatches. So another thing you need to do is, as you're knitting, you need to check your gauge from time to time down your sweater. But you're not comparing it to your blocked swatch, because this fabric is not blocked. What you're comparing to is your stitches up here. So you knit for a few inches, you compare the stitches in here, your stitch gauge, is it the same as this? If it is, you're good. It's not going to be the same as your blocked swatch because remember, most likely it changed. When you're knitting down here, you check your gauge again, check it up against this part right here. I may need to put that in the instructions because I think some people may even have ripped out some of their work thinking that their gauge had changed when it hadn't. The only way we're going to be able to check this against the blocked swatch is once we block our sweater. And speaking of blocking, that's going to be coming up as soon as we finish the sleeves. The very next thing we're going to do is block our sweater, and I will have a video on how to block your sweater. We'll block it before we put the shawl collar on because we're going to use information from our sweater to determine our shawl collar. So, oh good. Laura Wilkinson said she put in slick yarn instead of the cords without the huge stoppers on the ends and it fits better. That's great. So let me show you a trick I do for my sleeves. Here's the bottom of my sweater. I have my ribbing, right? It has not been blocked, but it's close enough. What I do is I put this on my arm like this. I may have shown this to you before, and I pull it together like this. And then I count the number of stitches around there. That's what I'm going to use for my cuff. That tells me how many stitches I'm going to need for working my cuff. That'll be my destination point. So when I'm doing my decreases, when I get down to here, if I still have more stitches in the cuff right before the ribbing, I will make those decreases. And I'll probably do that anyway because this is brioche knitting. And as you saw in the video that I worked yesterday for the brioche knitting, for a cuff, you will need to do some decreases in here because brioche is so much bigger than the standard knitting. Let me look here. Anybody else? If you have any questions at all, just chime in. If I miss your question, just post it again. So I'm going to talk about some other things here. I'm going to show you another project. This is called Summer something, or I don't remember the name. Let me see. I've got it written down here. This is called A Certain Summer. This is knit in Shabui Reed. It's 100% linen. Dolise knitted one of the samples for me. It blocks so beautifully. So this is a crescent shawl. And in this, it's a tutorial, just like all my things are. So I have this tab cast on, but I just do it with a single row, a single garter ridge, so that you don't end up with that big square in the middle, and it keeps it so it doesn't pooch up in the middle, because a lot of times the tab will push up and you get this peak like this right in the middle of your shawl. It peaks up right at the back of the neck like that. So what I got rid of the peak by making the tab one garter ridge rather than 3 garter ridges. I also teach in this tutorial how to put beads on with a crochet hook as you come to the places that you want them, but also how to put them on pre-strung. So there's both techniques here, and I have videos showing how to do that. And then the last thing that it has, which is really cool, is the Russian join, which is how you join the two fabrics. You knit the big crescent in one piece, you knit the lace in a big strip in another piece, and you join them together. The join is right here. It's not here. This is the faggoting, the lace that's faggoting. Here's the Russian join right here. And you do that with the available stitches without any extra yarn. It just uses your knitting needles and combining the two fabrics together. And it's a great technique to know how to do. This is also in my Ravelry store, this shawl. And my friend Ron at the Twist and Skein also has kits for this made up if you are interested. Okay, I'm going to show you something else that I did. This is a really interesting exercise. Okay, well, I need to start decrease. This is Mary Inman. Well, I need to start decreases for arm a different way so that I won't have large arms at top. Do you have a large arm at the top? Is that what you're saying? Or that you don't have a large arm at the top? If I don't have large arms, I have pretty skinny arms. So I just start my decreases right at the top. If you have a large arm at the top, you want to start your decreases down back where your arm starts narrowing in, wherever that may be. So she added an extra inch under the arm. Did you add an extra inch under the arm just to your sleeve or to your body? Because if you added an extra inch under here and then you knit down, you're going to have an extra inch in your body and an extra inch in your arm. So when you pick up your stitches under here, you either can pick up fewer stitches so you don't have that inch, or you're going to pick up the inch worth and have an inch more around your arm. And yes, you will need to decrease those to get rid of them, but I wouldn't do it real fast or your arm will look funny. Let's see, somebody else asked a question. That's Mary. If you do several decreases at the cuff, would you do symmetrical increases across as in SSK, knit together SSK? I would just choose one and go with it, Bonnie. I would do all knit two togethers or all SSKs, whichever one of your decreases you like the best. Most oftentimes, knit two togethers are less obvious than SSKs because when you do an SSK, it poofs the yarn up because it untwists it a little bit, so it makes it more visible. Let's see if I missed any other questions. Okay, we're doing good. So I want to show you another exercise that I did. I constantly experiment. That's how I've learned what I know. Plus I read a lot. I research knitting a lot. I've read almost all the available resources on knitting. So here's some yarn that I bought at Madrona a few years ago from a hand dyer in Oregon. It's lovely yarn. It is superwash, and it was, it's not merino, I don't remember what it was, but it's lovely, lovely yarn. And what I did was I knitted 3 swatches exactly the same. Same number of stitches, same rows, and I even weighed them to make sure that they're the same. And do you see the sizes of the swatches that I make? This is how big I make my swatches. See, they're pretty big. These are all exactly the same. So then what I did was I did an experiment. I took this swatch and I soaked it for 20 minutes in room temperature water, and I squoze out the extra. I like that word, squoze. You like that word? I squeezed out the extra water, rolled it in a towel, and then I put it on my blocking board and I stretched it as far as I could in every direction and pinned it out stretched as far as it would go and allowed it to dry. The second swatch was also soaked in the room temperature water, and I laid it out flat and I pinned it to the shape that it wanted to be. I did not stretch it in any way. The third swatch, I did not block. So when these 2 swatches were dry, I took them off the blocking boards. This one ended up, I think these are like 8 inches, 8 by 8 or 8 by 6 or something. This one was about an inch wider and longer than this swatch. When it did pull in, it pulled in a lot. It didn't stay that really big size. It did pull in a lot, but it was still bigger than this. And that was very interesting. But so I put them aside and I came back and looked at them about a month later. And they'd just been laying there. I hadn't been touching them, manipulating them, or anything. And guess what? This one was exactly the same size as this one. They are exactly the same. Do you see that? Exactly the same. So what this tells me is that your fabric is going to be the size it wants to be. You cannot manipulate that. So let's say you knit a sweater and it's too tight. And you say, okay, I'll just block it out. Well, you can, and when you first put it on, yes, it will be bigger. But over time, it's going to go to the size that it wants to be, and your sweater will get smaller and smaller and smaller until it's back to where it wants to be. Now, the unblocked swatch is still unblocked. You know, it's still curled and everything. And these are superwash wool. So people tell me, although I don't believe this, but a lot of people will say superwash wool does not block. Guess what? superwash wool does block, and it holds its block. Do you see how nice this is? Do you see how nice these are? They held their block. Otherwise they would look like this. Now I am going to do the same exercise with non-superwash wool. In fact, I have some that I'm going to work with, and I'm going to knit some great big swatches like this, another 3 swatches, and I'm going to do the exact same exercise with the non-superwash. But I have a big suspicion that the same thing is going to happen because superwash does not change the reactivity of the wool. Superwash just keeps it from felting. And felting and blocking are not related together. So the blocking should not be different, whether it's superwash or non-superwash. So I'm going to try that. It's a great experiment. And I also have some other experiments that I want to try. For example, I have always claimed that you should not reknit with yarn that has been blocked that's all kinky. I don't have any around here to show you. I don't see any laying around here. But you know how when you pull it out and it's all kinky? I do not think you should reknit with that because it does change your gauge. And there are people who says it does not change your gauge. But I think it's because they can't see that it changes your gauge. You know, when you train your eyes to see the knitting, there's a lot more that you can see that you never saw before. In fact, sometimes it's a curse because I can see mistakes a long ways away that other people don't see. But it's because I reviewed so much knitting with the Master Hand Knitting program that I trained my eyes to see these things. So let's see, I've got some other swatches here I was going to share with you. This is a swatch, and you can see all my swatches are big. This is a swatch I used to knit for a sweater for my daughter. It's held its block. This is superwash wool as well. It's very, very nice. It's lovely. But you see the size of the swatches that I make? This is a fingering weight swatch in the round for the top I wore last time. Remember that little top I had on? So it's big. See how big my swatch is? It's not itty bitty. And as you saw on that knitting in the round, swatching in the round, I knit the whole thing. I think it may take a little bit longer, but you get much more reliable results. And what this is all about is getting reliable results because you're going to be knitting a sweater based upon this. If you're trying to cut corners and save time because it takes too long to knit a full swatch in the round, what are you going to do on your sweater? So, you know, it might take you, it may have taken me an hour to knit this swatch. Maybe it takes you 2 hours, but that's just 2 hours of your time. How many hours are you going to spend on knitting your sweater? And hopefully it fits when you're done. So let's see. Dolise says she struggled with the superwash fingering she used for her second crescent shawl. It kept creeping back to a smaller size than I originally blocked it to. Yes. And Lori says, I have the hardest time splicing my ends together of my superwash merino wool. Should I do the Russian join? You can try the Russian join. The Russian join makes the fabric, it's double thick there. So it's going to show in your stitches. What I like about splicing is you're removing half the fibers from each strand so that when you splice it, it's still the same thickness. Now, it will pull apart if you're doing superwash wool, but all you have to do is work with it very, very carefully until you get past the splice. And it won't come out. Once it's knitted into the fabric, it will not come out. Yes, it'll come out when you just pull on the strand. But what you do is just have to treat it very gingerly until you get it into your knitting, and then it will not come out. I've heard that superwash will continue to stretch over time with the weight of the garment and become longer. Is that true? Not wool. Wool does not become longer. Alpaca, yes. Alpaca, and I don't know that they make superwash alpaca, but alpaca does not have kink. What keeps the wool from growing is the kink. And superwash does not remove the kink. It just removes the barbs on the individual fibers so that they don't catch with each other. Wool always bounces back. Do you see how it does that? Alpaca, because it's a straight fiber, it's smooth and it slips on itself, and it will grow with time. It gets longer and longer and longer and longer. So if you knit a sweater, start out with it short because it's going to get long. The sleeves are going to get really long. Let's see. Susan says, I joined a new ball of wool at the front edge near the top of the sweater. Can I deal with the ends now? Yes, you can deal with the ends now as long as they're not on the edge. Did you say you joined on the edge? If you joined on the edge, wait until after you've put on the shawl collar, because if you'd happen to weave those ends along the edge, it will affect picking up the stitches for the shawl collar. If I'm going to be joining or seaming along an edge, first of all, I try not to change yarns right on the edge. I will change in the middle of the fabric, and I'll weave the ends in if I want to, or I'll spit splice. But if you do have to join on the edge, just leave the ends there until after we've picked up for the shawl collar, and then you can weave them in. Lori Wilkerson says it's a twist-like yarn. Crimp, not kink. Yeah, it is crimp. It's the crimp, not kink. But the crimp is what gives wool its elasticity, is the crimp. And you can't remove the crimp from the wool. That's what gives it its special. And if you're going to use a blend, so if you want to retain the springiness of the wool, you need to have at least 50% wool in your blend. So let's say you have 50% wool, 50% silk, the wool will still give you the bounce that you want. If you have more than 50% of the silk, it's going to be very, very drapey, and you start having more of the qualities of the silk and less of the qualities of the wool. Okay. Elise Duchesne's, hi Suzanne, I'm very late with the knit along, will buy the course. Wonderful. You can jump in at any time. All of these videos are going to be here forever. The written materials will be here forever. I have no intentions of getting rid of them or deleting them, so you can jump in at any time. I had someone tell me in my live knitting class this week that someone else told her that I was going to delete all of these videos. That is not true. So if you've heard that from somebody, tell them, nope, you heard it from the source. I'm the source. I'm not deleting my videos. They will always be here for you to work on. Okay, you want to see where the cable goes into the ribbing. On my sweater, because I did the brioche ribbing, and here is my cable. I ended my cables. I brought them down to little points, and so they flow into the orange of the brioche ribbing. Okay, Luana, does that help you? Okay, Carol, sorry, got here late today. Is there an update today for picking up for sleeves? Yes, there will be. This afternoon, there's going to be an update. I've got one more video that I need to get uploaded, and then I'll be able to plug all the videos into the written materials. It'll be a few more hours. It takes me a long time to format because I want it to look nice. I know boo-boos still come out, you know, it's just how it is, but you guys have all been really nice about helping me with those. Terry, will a wool and alpaca blend yarn grow in length? It depends on how much wool there is and how much alpaca. Personally, I don't knit much with alpaca because where I live, it never gets cold enough to wear alpaca here. Alpaca is far warmer than wool. I'm not sure of the exact number, but it's like, I think it's like 4 or 5 times warmer than wool, and we hardly get a chance to wear worsted wool sweaters here. I do most of my work in fingering weight yarn, so I can't tell you with alpaca because I avoid it because it's just too hot for me. So. And Sue said, depends on the percentage of the wool. Yes, so you want to have at least 50% wool to have your wool properties overrule the other properties. But with alpaca, I'm not sure if 50% would be enough, but I suspect it would be. Maybe Sue can answer that. Bonnie Davis says, I love how my moss stitch border turned out, but I'm wondering if standard bind off in moss stitch will be stretchy enough for the shawl collar. When we get to the shawl collar, I'll show you how to do the bind off so it's stretchy enough. You don't need it stretchy down the front. You need standard bind off for that, the standard stretch of whatever bind off you're using. But around the shawl collar portion, we want that to be stretchy. And yes, I will be showing you how to make that stretchy. Don't worry. I'm not going to let you mess your sweater up. And let's see, Tracy, I've continued my cables through my ribbing. Do I need to decrease on my final row to account for cable flare? It depends. That's a great question, Tracy. It depends on your bottom and whether you're bigger at the bottom or you're slimmer. If you're slimmer, you might need to do some cable flare compensation. Excuse me. But if your bottom flares out a little bit, then cable flare can be your friend, and I would just bind off. So Sue says, Suzanne's correct, only need 20% alpaca to get the feel of the alpaca and the warmth of the alpaca. Do you know why alpaca is warmer? Alpaca fibers are hollow in the center. So it's kind of like a down coat. You know how the feathers, the down, not the feathers, but the down holds air, it traps air, and that's what makes it so warm. And then there's those Dacron sleeping bags that have the artificial down stuff. All those have little tubes going through the middle of the fibers that trap air. And that's what makes them so darn warm. That's why alpaca is warm. The actual hairs are hollow in the center and trap air. Wool is not hollow. It's a solid core fiber, kind of like human hair. Our human hair isn't hollow either. Okay, yes, same as the polar bear, hollow hairs. Anything that grows in a really cold climate, it has hollow, cashmere and kiviot are hollow, even though they're so small, it's hard to imagine that they're hollow on the inside, but yes, they're hollow, and that's what makes them so warm. They're much warmer than wool. Okay, any other questions? Let me see, I brought some more swatches in here. Here's another swatch. It's just standard stockinette, but you can see the sizes. I wanted to impress upon you, so many people knit their swatches 4x4. That does not give you enough information to get an accurate gauge. And remember in the gauge video, I would put a pin out here on this edge and one here, a couple stitches in from the edge. I count those stitches all the way across. I get as many as I can of, I call them viable stitches. The edge stitches are not viable, so don't count those. I count them and then I measure them. And then I divide the stitches by the measurement, and that's how I get my stitch gauge. Yes, see my ties? I identify all my things. Okay, so here's some other experiments that I did. I was thinking at one time, I really wanted to make a lace top that had lace on the front, and I wanted to do a stripe on the back. So what I did here, can you see this? Parts of it are thinner than others. Can you see that? So what I did is part of it I worked with 2 strands held together, and then with the same needle I did a single strand for several rows, then 2 strands for several rows and a single strand. I just think that's so beautiful. Isn't that gorgeous? It's subtle but lovely. So I worked up that swatch. So this is like a lace weight. This is Miss Bab's lace weight. And then I did the same thing with some heavier yarn, but it wasn't as effective. You can see it there. See, it's just 3 stripes on this. It's a heavier stripe with 2 strands, and then the lighter stripe. Can you see it? It's hard to tell. Yeah, you can see it there. 2 strands here, 1 strand here, 2 strands here. This is Anzula Breeze, which is the 50% linen, 50% silk. It's very soft. So I liked the lighter weight one better. Let's see, I did it in another one. I didn't bring that one in. I have a third one that I did. So this one I liked best in the really fine. This is like 800 yards to 100 grams. So it looked really good. Hand-dyed yarn, Miss Babs. And so this one is the same yarn as that Miss Babs held double with the lace. So this is what I was going to do on the front of the top with this on the back and the sleeves. So I still have that idea. It might be something that I do. Kind of fun. So this is another one that I did but I thought it was too flimsy. This was going to be a top also, but it's too lightweight. This is also Miss Babs, and it's like 800 yards to 100 grams, but it's too flimsy for a top. This is the Breeze again, single ply. Oh, I really like that. So this was the Breeze double ply, same yarn. This is the exact same yarn. So double ply, single ply, double ply, and this was the single ply. And I have another one of these somewhere in double ply, but I didn't like it. This was very pretty, but you'd have to wear a tank top or something under it. So those are just experiments that I do. Let's see. Do you guys want to do a Wednesday live stream or not? It's up to you. I'll do whatever it is you want to do. Let me know. You can say on Ravelry, just speak up on Ravelry and say whether you want a live stream. So if you want to do that, and we'll be working on the sleeves some more. And I hope to have my 2 sleeves done, and maybe we can talk about blocking a little bit too. Okay, so let's plan it for Wednesday. What's a good time for you guys? Now, last time, what did I do? I did like 11 o'clock. Or this Wednesday, I could do 12 o'clock. My friend Diane, who I go to lunch with, she had knee surgery this week, so she won't be going to lunch. I could do 12 o'clock on Wednesday. Would that work? So some of you that are working, maybe it'll fit in with your lunchtime or the middle of the night. Maybe it depends on where you live. Okay, we'll figure it out. You can post on Ravelry. And let's see, I didn't bring anything else out to show you. Oh, I'm going to show you one more thing. These are my Starry Night socks. Have you ever seen them? This is my design. And they're beautiful. I love these. They were so much fun. Here's the sole. Isn't that pretty? So you do decreases and increases to create that design. And these are knitted top down, and it's not a heel flap and gusset. You knit the gusset and the heel flap all in one piece, and then you turn and you do short rows back and forth and decreases at the same time across here in stranded knitting in color. And then you go down and work this way. I also have extra charts for people who have wider legs at the tops. I charted that out separately. So this is called Starry Night. It's available on Ravelry. I knitted one in each colorway. Isn't this interesting? I love these. I use these as a teaching example all the time. It's the exact same yarn. So I knitted this one with the dark blue is the foreground and the white is the background. This one I did white is the foreground, dark blue is the background. Now, the soles are worked exactly the same, but look at them. Do they look different? Why do you think they look different? Believe it or not, against everything that Arne and Carlos say, this is called yarn dominance. So whichever color is held to the left of between the two colors, no matter how you hold your yarns, whether you hold them in both in one hand or one in each hand, the color that is to the left will be the dominant color. So in this one, my foreground color was to the left of the background color. So guess what? The sole, the white, is the dominant. Here, my foreground color was the dark blue. The background color was the white. Guess what? The sole is dominant in the blue. Isn't that interesting? I love these. And these are so pretty on. So if you're interested, those are also in my Ravelry store, and Ron also has kits for these. The kits are linked on the pattern pages. All you have to do is click on the link. It takes you to his online shop, and if you want to buy a kit, and he has these in several different colorways if you're interested in them. Okay. So Bonnie, all you have to do, remember when we did gauge swatches? If you want to make these socks, all you have to do is use a smaller needle so that your stitches are smaller and they'll fit your foot. You would have to do a gauge swatch first. In fact, this January, the live class that I'm going to teach in Bakersfield, the advanced class, I'm going to teach this sock, but it's going to be this style of creating a pattern. Many people just want to make these socks, which they can, but I'm also going to teach how to plug in a stitch pattern and how to do the gauge swatch and how to make it fit your foot. If you guys want to do that as a live course, we could. It doesn't matter to me because I'm preparing the materials one way or the other. Anyway, we could do this as a course right after Christmas, the beginning of January, in between now and when we start the next sweater, if you want. And then I can teach you how to plug in whatever stitch pattern, stranded pattern you want into these areas and how to balance it. See, it took a lot of experimenting. It's not just you just make these up. I had to figure out, do I want 1 stripe, 2 stripes, 3 stripes? How many stripes did I want to come down here? How is I going to make it blend and go? See how this stripe comes down and goes all the way down to the toe. This stripe comes all the way down and goes to the heel, and the in-between stripe is the beginning of the stripes for the gusset. That took a lot of experimenting, a lot of knitting. I probably knitted this part of the swatch for several weeks before I started the sock. And then I had to decide, how am I going to center these? Should I stagger them? Should I put one up high and one down low? And I tried that and it didn't look good. So I finally decided I'd put them straight across from each other, and that looks best. So I'm going to teach you how to do that type of thing in that class. It's just designing and thinking about your knitting and planning in advance. So let's see what we've got going on here. So let's do Wednesday at noon, Dolise, okay? 12 o'clock Pacific time, Wednesday. We'll put that on the schedule for the next live stream. I'll pull out some more of my swatches if you want to see them, if you like doing that. I have lots and lots of them. I can show you lots of things I've experimented with and what I've learned from them. And anything else? Anything else? Okay, Roger. Any chance you've looked at Tin Can Knit's Strange Brew book? Was wondering if it may be helpful with the upcoming yoke sweater and designing our own yoke. I haven't looked at that book. I'll take a look at it, Roger, and see. It may be something that it would be good. I like Tin Can Knits. Her stuff's really awesome. She's another excellent designer, thinks about what she's doing. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to sign off. We'll see you on Wednesday. And watch for the handout, the updated sleeves. It'll be later this afternoon. In fact, right now I might take a nap. And then I'll be back working on finishing up that video and then get the written materials out to you. Okay? So take care. It was good seeing you all. And we'll see you again next time. Happy knitting.